Hi everyone, Adrian Player here. Now that you've watched video one and you've kind of seen the progression plan and what Maria and I have been doing on the broking side and life side, and this video is going to be focusing on what we've done on the investment side. So if you don't know what's happened on the resi side, and look, you've just got to acknowledge the mistakes that you make over time, and half of those mistakes that you make, half of them the market makes those mistakes for you. Half the time you're so distracted in your life and your business where you make those mistakes, and potentially lender. So you've had all these lender changes with Macquarie shutting down trust lending, and then you've got negative gearing changes with the Labor government changes, and then you've got APRA and ASIC coming in with 6 times debt to income ratio caps. And then you've got all the lenders after Macquarie shut down trust lending. They've come out and they've impacted all the trust lending space on the resi side. And now you've got all the SMSF changes to the resi market that's finishing as of August 10. So half the time it's because you're so distracted in life that you miss opportunities. The other half of the time, something happens lender and policy wise where you've got to make changes, right? So let's talk about us and the resi investment side, and then we're going to be focusing on, what's been happening in the last kind of 12 to 24 months that made us make the choices that we did. So after we missed all the granny flat builds and getting the lending for all the granny flats, then we missed the 4 to 5 year fixed on, say, a rate of, say, 3 to 3.2% on the investment rates back when the rates were zero. We had to make a choice, right? Now, that choice wasn't immediate because we were holding the 9 resi investment properties. So what did we do? All right, so we were holding the properties and they were going through the roof, right? So we had one property in Carey Park in Bunbury. We bought that for $330. We sold that for $510. 16 to 17 months later, we did an internal bedroom conversion for $6,000. We upticked the rent from $450 a week to $580 to $610, and then we sold it for $510 almost 16 to 17 months later. So that was never going to be a long-term hold, and I would never hold a property in an area like Bunbury long-term unless I had maybe a entry price of, say, $250 or something, which was not us. We saw the properties go up a little bit before we got in, so we got in, we got out, we made our money. All right, our first property in Woodbury, we bought that for, what was that for? $440, and we ended up selling that for just on $750 in the Woodbury market on the outskirts of Newcastle. And then the majority of the properties that we held in Brisbane, in the Ipswich and the Logan markets, were buys between $380 and $420, and we're selling them for $750 to $800, most of those. And then the units that we bought for $160 low, 2 units, and we sold those for $380 and $388, right? So what were the reasons why we sold? So there was a period of time, and bear in mind, all of our properties were older. They were 40 to 70 years old. They were well maintained, but they were still old. So there were periods of time where we had cash buffers and we had decent rates, and we were maxed on the 9, so we weren't really pushing that much more. But then we had maintenance. So there was times where we had 4 properties with maintenance at the same time. Our Ormie Hills property had gutter and mold issues multiple times. Our Raceview property had a water issue where after big storms, water would seep in through the bricks and ruin the flooring. So we had to rip up all the flooring, polish it and make it easier to maintain, and then have a water plan. Our Woodridge place, we had a big maintenance vehicle for a fire down the street, park on the sidewalk, and then because it was a little bit of a an incline. It wasn't flat. The water erosion had moved some of the soil under it, under the slab, then created a little bit of a void. So then when the truck went on it, it cracked the slab. So we had that. Bethania had multiple screen issues, blinds issues, because the tenant had kids, and it looked like that they were hanging off the blinds and things. And yeah, just a number of things like that. Our Eastern Heights property had doorknob issues. We had to shave 2 doors because every time it got to winter, the doors wouldn't open and close. A couple of shower head issues. Some of them were minor, some of them were major. Woodbury had probably 4 maintenance requests in the 3 years that we held it. So look, small things that adds up to somewhere between 3 to 5 grand a year, which is very normal, right? But when you get hit with 4 at the same time, and then your properties go through a cycle where they come close to double, and then you start seeing affordability limits start getting hit, and then they start announcing rate cuts of 2 to 3 rate cuts, we ended up getting to a point where it's like, okay, let's go and I knew that affordability limits were coming close to being hit around the 750 to 800 mark. And I just didn't believe all the spruikers and what they said about property prices just going north for, 10 to 15 years straight to the 2032 Olympics. I'd never seen a market that I could track go up this much over a 5 to 6 year period. Even if Brisbane didn't go anywhere from 2011 to 2019, my thought process was this: like, would Brisbane continue going through the roof? No, 99% chance. I had to say in my mind no. So if I thought that, what was my thoughts? So here's a couple of my thoughts. Would a Woodridge buyer, or there's one suburb north where just over the highway, right? And I had to ask myself the question. It was a 1 to 1.2 mil suburb. I said, if people get priced out there, would they ever come south to live in Woodridge? And the answer is a flat out no, they would never. They would live in apartments or townhouses in their area, around the Mount Gravatt area. They would never come south and live in Woodridge because of how bad it is. All right. And second thing is, what can a normal family afford? Two people working, husband and wife, and then you've got the 2 kids. What can they afford? 750 to 800. Even on low rates, it was stress testing at that level. Okay, and then I had to ask myself the question, are the investors still buying in these areas? And the answer was yes, up until the end of 2025, but they were really the uneducated investors, the beginner investors. All right, they didn't really understand the market that they were invested in, and also the fact that the smart money was already exiting, right? So everything led to me and telling me to sell. All right, and then I had to understand where the money was going to go, right? So I already knew, because we've got about 1,600 investors on our books, and the accountant that we deal with has about 12,000+ on their books. So we already knew where the majority of the money was going, and this is well before the Labor government changes. You started seeing a big pool of investors sell their resi and rotate into commercial, and it was coming like a wave. Like, you could see it. So 2022, 2023, we weren't doing much commercial lending. 2024 hits, we double the amount. End of 2024 into 2025, it doubled again. And then by the time before these Labor government changes happened, we're probably doing 2 to 3x what we were doing in the commercial lending space, because naturally investors that get bigger move over to the commercial space. So now you kind of know the thought process and why we did what we did with selling the resi. Then we can, on the next video, we can talk about, where we went, what we did, and where we put our money. And then you'll have a very good guide on not just what I've done, but what a lot of investors are doing right now. All right. Hopefully that gives you a bit of information. Send me a message if you need anything.